In this video, I'm going to show you how to install a MyEnergi Hub, Harvi and Eddi. Now, most importantly, if you're thinking of doing this, please make sure that you get a qualified professional to do the work for you. The purpose of this video is just a guide to show you how easy the installation process is. As a quick reminder of what the differences between these three devices are, the MyEnergi Hub is a gadget which allows your other MyEnergi devices to be connected to the internet, and it can then do two things. One is it can receive updates, firmware updates to the devices when MyEnergi release them. The hub enables that to be downloaded from the internet and then applied to your other MyEnergi devices. The second thing the hub allows you to do is use the MyEnergi app to look at what your entire MyEnergi system is actually doing. So you can monitor the solar generation, the power going into your Eddi, the power going into your Zappies if you have a car charger, etc., etc. Without the hub, you can't monitor these things via the app. You can only look at that information via the display on your Eddi. Okay, so in a nutshell, that's what the hub does. The Harvi is a device which allows the MyEnergi system to wirelessly communicate the readings from the CT clamp to your other MyEnergi devices. So if you have a Zappy or an Eddi, they require a CT clamp on your main supply so they know what your house is doing and can divert surplus power to those devices. Now, if your incoming supply is quite some distance from where you've located your Zappy or your Eddi, or the route isn't feasible for you to run a wire, then that's where the MyEnergi Harvi comes into play, because you can connect to this using a CT clamp to your incoming supply. It doesn't require any power, it generates its own power from the CT clamp, and then it will wirelessly transmit the readings over to your Eddi or your Zappy. And to highlight what the MyEnergi Eddi does, this device is a solar power diverter. So what this means is that it can take your surplus solar power that you've generated and divert it into other devices that you have around your home, which is compatible with the Eddi. So for example, you can connect it to your immersion heaters on your hot water tank so that it uses the extra electricity to warm your hot water. You can connect it to two devices at the same time, although only one will work at a time, but it can be connected to two things. So you can have two hot water tanks, you could have two immersion elements in the same hot water tank, you could connect it to a hot water tank and your underfloor heating, you could connect it to a heat pump, you could connect it to water heating, you could connect it to an electric radiator, and so on and so on. There's many examples on the MyEnergi website of the applications for this device. But basically, it can output 3.6 kilowatts, which is quite a lot of power. That's more than the average kettle. That's 1.5 times a kettle. And it can do this continuously until the Eddi device tells it to shut off. It can then automatically read your other device that you've got connected to it and divert power to that as well if the first device is already kind of full up or heated up all your hot water or whatever it is. So in a nutshell, that's what the Eddi does. I would recommend reading the website to understand this better, but the key point here is that it uses the CT clamp to read that you're diverting your excess solar to the grid, and instead of sending it to the grid, what the Eddi does is then switch on whatever device you've got connected to it, so that surplus power goes into that device. And it can modulate the power so that if you're exporting 3 kilowatts to the grid, it will pump 3 kilowatts into whatever your device is. If you're only outputting 500 watts to the grid, then it will only divert 500 watts to your other devices. So it's a really good way of making sure that you're using up your surplus solar and you're not sending it to the grid, and it also makes sure that you don't draw any additional power from the grid. The Eddi's got a setting called boost mode, so if you just want it to turn on at full power, then it will do that and draw electricity from the grid, or if you have a battery at home, it will do that. It won't limit itself by the solar surplus generation. So it's basically like an override button. If you run out of hot water and you just need some now, you can press the button, and like 15-20 minutes later you should have enough water in your tank to keep you going. That's the idea. So when I come to installing the Eddi, I'll talk a little bit more about some of the features on it. But that's a highlight of what the differences are between the three. So this is what the MyEnergi Hub looks like in real life. It is a small device, it's very lightweight. It's about 10 centimeters wide, 10 centimeters tall, and about 4 or 5 centimeters deep. There's nothing much to it. On the back, it just looks like that. I'm just putting my finger over the serial number, and all it has on the top are 2 ports. So to get this thing installed, it's really easy. Using the Ethernet cable that came supplied with the Eddi, all you're going to do is plug that into the Ethernet port over here, like so. And then using the power cable which came supplied with the Eddi, you're going to put it in the port over there. So when I plug this in, it's going to come to life. So let's take a look at the lights. Okay, it takes a few seconds to kind of energize itself, and it's going to go through its settings. Now I've already installed this and paired it all up, so all these different things have been activated. But if you haven't, what you'll find is that the power light comes on, and a few seconds later the server light comes on. But the Harvi and the Eddi and the Zappi won't be on yet. Well, I'll show you how to pair those up later on. But that's it. It's as simple as that to install the hub. Just plug in those 2 cables and you're away. Now, if you want to download the latest firmware, all you need to do is press and hold this download button for about 2 seconds. And that's if you've got a hub which was manufactured after July 2020. This is the version 3 firmware already on this hub. If you've got an older one, what you do is you remove the power, you press and hold the download button for 5 seconds, and then plug the power back in and keep holding. And what you'll find is the server light starts to flash in different colors to tell you that it's now downloading the latest firmware. So I won't press it now. So on this version of the hub, it is the newer one. So all I need to do is press and hold it for 2 seconds, and you'll find that the server light changes colors and it will start downloading the firmware. It does say in the instructions that it can take up to an hour to download the latest firmware. So I'm not going to do that right now. But basically all you do is press the button and that's it. Come back to it in an hour. And the server light changes colors to indicate what it's doing. I'll let you read the instructions as a reminder of what the colors mean. The next thing you need to do is pair the hub to either your Zappi or your Eddi. So one of those 2 devices is going to be your master device where everything connects to that. So the hub needs to be paired. So in order to do that, all you do is you press the pairing button and you press and hold it for 2 seconds, and then it will put the hub into pairing mode. Simple as that. And then all you have to do is go over to your Eddi or Zappi, and then on the settings over there, all the devices which are searching to be paired will show up in a list, and if the serial numbers match, you select one of those. So when I get to showing you how to install the Eddi, I will show you what that menu looks like. But that's really it. There's nothing more that you can do with the hub. It's plug in the 2 cables, press this button if you want to download the firmware once in a while, and you press that button to pair it. You only need to pair it when you're setting it up. After that, you don't ever need to touch this thing again. The Ethernet cable provided over here must be hardwired to your router. This thing does not have Wi-Fi, so the hub needs to be located somewhere in your property where you can connect an Ethernet cable to the router directly. The cable that comes supplied with it is about 30 centimeters long. If that's not enough, you can use any Ethernet cable that you've got, which is longer, to run a cable between your router and wherever you want to locate the hub. Okay, now before you kind of make any permanent installation, I would recommend that you just kind of set it all up temporarily, just to make sure that the hub is within range of the Eddi and the Harvi, if that's what you've got, just to make sure it's all working. Then you can install it more permanently. Okay, let's move on to talk about the Harvi. So this is what the MyEnergi Harvi looks like. So this is the device which will wirelessly transmit your CT clamp reading to your Zappi or your Eddi. So it's very similar to the hub, which I just showed you. In terms of its dimensions, it's exactly the same size. It's 10 centimeters wide, 10 centimeters tall, and about 4 centimeters deep. There is absolutely nothing on the back, just some slots here where you would insert the CT clamp. So as I said, this was already installed. I've just removed it to make this video. So this is the CT clamp, and it gives you about 5 meters worth of wire, and then this cord wasn't attached when it came in the box, so you have to connect this yourself, and I'll show you how easy. It's really simple. So first of all, let's talk about the CT clamp. This is what it looks like, and what you need to do is clamp this around your meter tail, right? And when I get there, I'll show you how to do it. But basically, your live meter tail, which flows from your meter towards your consumer unit, you need to clamp this around that. That's it. There's no actual electrics to connect up, right? It works by induction. So if you clamp it around that, the Harvi will automatically come to life. To make sure you get it the right way around, it has an arrow. So the wire, once you've put it in, if this is what it looks like, and it's pointing that way, the current needs to be flowing through the wire from your meter, which would be on this side, towards your consumer unit, which would be on that side. Okay, so you need to look at where your meter is, see where the red or the brown wire is coming out from that, which is your live, and you need to feed this clamp the right way around so that the current is traveling in the direction of your consumer unit. If you get it wrong, it's not really a big deal. You'll know, because when you turn it all on, your readings will not make any sense at all. That's really all there is to this clamp. So let's show you the Harvi. Now, to open up the Harvi, what you need to do is get a small screwdriver, a flathead one, and on the bottom over here, you'll see there's these 2 clips. What you need to do is push over here to release the white plastic cap on the top. You can either do it from the bottom side or you can do it from the top side. It's the same. Now, in my case, I've already pre-opened it because it's quite difficult. But the way I did it is I got my flat screwdriver and I put it in the gap over here and I prized it away. And then it came loose, and I repeated on this side, and then I managed to get the whole lid off like that. Now, as I said, when you purchase yours, it will come without the wire in there. It is a 2-core wire. It's just got a red cable and a black cable, a positive and a negative. Inside the Harvi, you have 3 CT terminals. So you can connect up to 3 CT clamps into here if you wanted to. So in my case, I've got my live feed connected up into the first terminal, but you might want to put a CT clamp around your solar production and or your battery storage. So that's an example where you might want to get more CT clamps and plug them into these other 2 terminals. And then what you do is on your Zappi or your Eddi, you just tell it what you've actually configured into these terminals, so then the whole app starts to work. But that is really all you've got to do. So with the CT clamp, get the end of the wire, feed it through one of the slots over here, okay, and then to fit it into your CT clamp, I would recommend using CT1, okay, and all you're going to do is pull back this orange tab and push the wire in. The red is normally the positive, the black is normally the negative, so make sure you get this the right way around. Again, if you don't, then your readings are going to be messed up. So all you got to do is slide this orange tab down, and it creates enough of a gap in there for you to push the red wire in. Repeat the process with the black wire. That's it. That is all that you need to do. Then what you do is you leave a bit of slack in there, so when you remove it, you can take it apart quite easily, like I've done here, and then wedge the wire down over here so that it's taut. And then all you do is you put this back together, which goes like that, and then with a bit of a click, it pushes down. This post-it note is just covering up my serial number. There's a sticker under there. That's it. Okay, then what you've got to do is go off to your meter, clamp the CT clamp around the live tail, place this nearby somewhere. Then, similar to the hub, what you need to do is press the pairing button for about 2 seconds, and then you've got to go over to your Zappi or your Eddi to find this device which is searching to be paired and match it up. It's as simple as that. So let's go off to the meter and install this over there. Okay, here I am next to my meter. It's a bit of a cramped space here, but all I've done is position the Harvi on top of the consumer unit. It's not clamped or fitted down in any way, it's just resting there neatly. The grey wire for the CT clamp is trailing down over here, and this is my meter, and that red tail over there is the live. And if you look carefully, my solar array and other devices have all got their own CT clamps attached to it as well. So what we need to do with this is exactly the same thing. Now, remember what I said about the arrow. The arrow needs to point in the direction from your meter to your consumer unit. So in the case of the red tail here, the current is flowing down this red wire. So I need to make sure this arrow is pointing down. Okay, so there it is pointing down, and all I'm going to do is clamp it around the red wire. Okay, so that's it. You heard the click and it's done. And then I'm just going to tuck the excess wire over there in the corner. And if you look at the Harvi now, I don't know how well you can see this, but there is a little dot in the middle and there's a green flashing light you just saw. That means that the Harvi is receiving current from that live tail, enough for it to transmit the signal over to MyEnergi. Okay, and then the last thing to do once you've done this is to put it into pairing mode. So you're going to press and hold the pairing button for 2 seconds, and then you're going to go over to your Eddi to hook it up over there. That's as simple as it is to install the Harvi. In this portion of the video, I'm going to show you how to install the Eddi. Now, I would remind you that you are playing with electrics. This is 240 volts. So I would recommend you get a qualified professional to do this bit for you. Even though it's quite easy, it can be very dangerous if you get it wrong. Okay, so let me just give you a bit of an overview of the setup first of all. There's lots of switches and things on the wall. Like I said, I've already installed the Eddi. What I've actually done is just removed it partially just to show you how it all comes together. So let me orientate you. With my Eddi, I'm going to connect it to 2 different immersion heaters. This tank that you see here is one of them, and over there on the top is one of the immersion heaters. That flex cable at the back is the cable which comes from the immersion heater, and it's wired into this top fuse over here. The second output from the Eddi is connected to a second immersion heater that we've got in a different tank in the loft. So the wire comes all the way down and it's connected into the second isolator switch on the bottom over there. Okay, both of those wires go to the Eddi, and I'll show you how. And then the switch to turn on and off the Eddi is this one over here at the top. Okay, so I've got an isolator for that. The first thing to explain is the wiring. There are 3 wires that you need in total to make this whole thing work. Okay, first of all, from wherever your power supply is, whether you're going to get it directly from your consumer unit or you're doing a fused spur, you need to get a isolator switch like this on the wall, number 1. From there, the output goes to your Eddi. Okay, and my Eddi is down here. I'm going to show you the wiring in a moment. Then, from the Eddi, you have 2 outputs, which are going to your immersion heaters. But before it goes direct to your immersion heater, you need to put an isolator in it. Okay, so from my Eddi, I have 2 wires coming out. One of them goes to the top fuse here, which is one immersion heater. The other wire goes to the second fuse, which is the second immersion heater. And then coming out of each of those boxes is the wire which goes to the actual immersion heater. So the top box here is that flex cable you see there at the back going to that immersion heater. And the second box, the wire actually goes through the wall and it goes upstairs to the loft. It's as simple as that. There's nothing more complicated to the wiring than that. So when you get your Eddi, in the box you're going to find it's all screwed together, and at the back is a backplate which looks like this. What you need to do is get the backplate out, and you're going to mount that to a secure wall, right? In this case I've got some MDF here where everything's connected to. It's a false wall, there's lots of room for wiring behind it, but make sure you don't mount this to anything flimsy. It has to be mounted vertically, so you can't put it on the floor or you can't leave it on a shelf. You have to mount it on a wall of some sort. Follow the instructions, but you need to leave about 15 centimeters gap kind of all the way around so it has sufficient ventilation. Then get this bracket that it's supplied with, position it on your wall, make sure it's level, and screw it in. Now, for all the wiring on the Eddi, it's actually at the bottom. So what you need to do is beneath your bracket somewhere, it doesn't have to be central, it can be anywhere along the bottom kind of line, you need to bring all of the relevant wires out. Step number 2, get the actual Eddi device and remove the top cover. So to remove it, what you need to do is loosen this screw, and once you've done it, they'll come out completely. If I can get it out. And then all you got to do is very gently slide this and it will come clean off. Now, okay, the next thing to do is to actually get your Eddi device and get it positioned onto this bracket. So if you look very carefully, the bracket has this kind of prong here and this prong here, and the Eddi basically slots onto it. And then to secure it to the bracket, what you do is you put in 2 screws which are fixed down there. So before you connect up any wires, you want to position the Eddi. So as I said, mine's already connected up, but I'll show you what it looks like. This is the Eddi device. Be very careful, it's quite heavy. And once you've got your bracket on, all you do is you line it up, and there you go. That's it. So the screws that you need will be supplied. These are what they look like. I can't remember off by heart, but I think they were already screwed into there, so you might need to loosen them off first. But let's get this screwed on. Okay, so now the Eddi is fixed to the bracket. If you wiggle it around, it is not going to move. Okay, it's solid. In the pack, you'll get a little aerial like this. I would put this on, it helps with connecting to the Harvi. All you have to do is twist it on. There's nothing more complicated than that to get this thing attached, okay? Okay, so here's a close-up of the Eddi with the cover off. You don't have to be kind of alarmed and concerned by what you see. It's really, really quite simple. So there's only 3 sections you really need to worry about in my case, where I'm installing 2 immersion heaters. I will say that if you happen to have a scenario where you need to install the relay sensor board, there is a connection for it up here on this side, and you have to get an additional gadget which plugs in over there. But in my case, I don't need that. So let me orientate you to so you know what you can see. This is the location for the incoming supply over here. So you need to get your mains feed, which comes from your fused spur or direct from your consumer unit, and you need to wire it into there. The terminals are labelled, which you can't see because mine's already wired in, but live is the left, neutral is in the middle, and earth is on the right hand side. I didn't have an earthing sleeve handy, so what I've used is a bit of remaining sheath and insulated the earth that way. I will do it properly when I can get my hands on some earthing sleeve. On the right hand side over here are the output terminals. So this is where you wire up your immersion heaters or underfloor heating or whatever you're connecting up. Again, it's really simple. There are labels underneath which are hidden behind the wires, but it basically says H1, H2, neutral and earth. So all you're doing is immersion heater number 1, you're going to put the live into H1, you're going to put the neutral into N, and you're going to put the earth into the earth on that side. That's it. If you have a second immersion heater or a water heater or a radiator, whatever you're going to connect up to this, you put the live into H2, you put the other neutral into the neutral, and you put the other earth into the earth. That's it. There's nothing more to it. It's really simple. Okay, so just for clarity, in my case where you have 2 immersion heaters hooked up, whichever one's going to be your first immersion heater, you put the live into H1, and for the second immersion heater, you put the live from that cable into H2. And then you put the 2 neutrals in the neutral bar, and you put the 2 earths in the earth bar. That's all you've got to do. Now, if you are lucky enough not to need the Harvi, because your Eddi is located close enough to your meter where you've run your CT clamp, then you can wire the CT clamp directly into the Eddi. And if that was the case, if you look carefully over here it says CT1 and CT2, and here are the terminals. So all you would do is loosen off the screw for CT1 and put the
negative and positive. The far left is a negative and the second one along is positive, and then for CT2 it's negative and then positive. So wire those into there, and then what you've done is hardwired your CT clamp direct to your Eddi. That is literally all you have to do. Everything else in here, be very careful not to touch it or damage it. The screen does have a little sticky peel on it so it doesn't get scratched. I've left it on in my case. You can choose to do whatever you want.
So once you've got all the wires hooked up, don't forget to use the whatever this thing's called, the clamp thing over here, to secure the cable in place so it doesn't get yanked out accidentally. Okay, make sure that you've done a tug test on the wires to be sure that they're not going to slide out of their sockets. And once you're satisfied with what you've done, the final thing to do is put the cover back on. So here's the cover. As you can see, it's got two prongs on the side which slot into these slots that you see here in the frame of the Eddi, not in the back plate, but in the frame of the Eddi. So I'm going to slide that in. There you go. And then finally just put the two screws in which you took off earlier on. Now if you're satisfied you've done everything properly, what you're going to do is switch it all on. So step number 1, turn on your fused spur. Okay. And then step number 2, I was wondering why my Eddi didn't come to life. But on the bottom there is a rocker switch. So if you switch it to the left, it's on. If it's in the middle, it's off. And if it goes to the right, it means bypass. So bypass means it's going to ignore all the smart stuff that the Eddi can do and just turn on your immersion heater. So that's a way of using it if you have a problem with your Eddi or if you just want it to be on. Anyway, for now, we're going to switch the rocker to the left, which is the on position. And there we go. It's come to life. If you look at the screen, it's initializing. In my case, because I've already got this installed, it's come to life and it's telling me what it's doing. You can see, first of all, that here is my sun icon, and here's my house icon, and here's my grid icon. So what it's saying is, this is how much power is going from my solar array to the house, and then this is how much power is going from the house to the grid. Now, I don't have a CT clamp on my solar array for MyEnergi. I have it for my other brands which I use, so I don't have any reading there. But I do have that CT clamp which we installed for the Harvi, which is on my meter tail. So you can see, for example, here it's currently saying 0.1 kilowatts is being imported from the grid to the house. It's flashed up for a moment and it stopped. Okay. You need to configure the date and time, so I'm not going to go through all the settings. You can read the instructions for that. They're pretty clear. What I will show you is how to pair your hub and your Harvi. So if you remember from earlier on, I said you need to put those devices into pairing mode, and then you need to come to the Eddi, which will be your master device, to hook it all up. So you go to the menu, press the menu button, and then I'm going to go down to settings, press the tick button, then I'm going to go down to advanced, press the tick button. The default pin code is 4 zeros at the time of making this video. And then the second option here is linked devices. So I'm going to go to that, press the tick button, and then the second option down is pairing mode. I go there, and now what it's going to do is search for any MyEnergi devices which you've put into pairing mode. Now, in my case, it's not going to find anything because I haven't put them in pairing mode again. I don't want to break my setup. But what you'll find is after a few seconds on this screen, it will start to list the serial number for the devices it can find. So you should find that if you go and put your hub and your Harvi into pairing mode, in my case, it took about 30 to 45 seconds before they appeared on this list. Once you're satisfied that what's appearing on the list is definitely your device and not your neighbor's, you simply select it and press the tick button, and then it becomes paired. Simple as that. So if I back out of this menu, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all hooked up. So you can then come back to the previous menu, go to devices, and it'll show you what's hooked up. So in my case, you can see that my Eddi, which is this device, is there, and my hub is second, and my Harvi is third. If you look very carefully next to the Harvi, after this, that's not the whole serial number, there's more numbers to it. But if you look on the right hand side, there's a small kind of infinity icon. What this means is that Harvi is the device which is providing the CT reading for the grid. Now you can only have one of your devices providing that reading, so you can't get a CT clamp and hook it up directly to your Eddi and have the Harvi, because that's a conflict of interest. You just need one CT clamp hooked up to one device, and you need to tell the system which one is the master, which it's going to trust for all the readings. But that is literally it in terms of pairing the devices. It's really easy. The last thing to show you then is how to do an update. So you go to the system menu, and then you simply go download firmware, and you press OK. And if you have downloaded firmware to your hub, and your hub has new firmware for the Eddi to provide to it, you press this button and you leave it alone. In my case, it took about 20 minutes to download the firmware from the hub wirelessly to the Eddi, and then it reboots a couple of times to install the firmware. And then once it's all done, it will come back to normal and carry on working like it's supposed to be. You don't have to come back and turn it on or anything. So you can simply tell it to upload the firmware and forget about it. But that's really all there is in terms of getting the Eddi going. So you can just back out to the main menu button over here, and you can see at the moment I'm not generating any surplus, so it's waiting for surplus, and then it will divert it to my hot water tank. So you can see it's got an icon for hot water tank, and it says number 1, so it's going to divert to my main tank first, and then when that one's full, it will go to the second tank. So far today, it seems to have diverted 0.47